Hello, I'm Dr. Gurung. I'm a consultant psychiatrist. Today, while going to my work, I was listening to some motivation videos, and they were talking about a certain chemical called dopamine, which I feel is overhyped. And a lot of the motivation video they talk about, activating dopamine. But as a psychiatrist, I've also had experience of working in neuropsychiatry in Liverpool for almost 8 months. Neuropsychiatry is a big chunk of MR Psych, and as a college tutor and as education and clinical supervisor, my expertise is also in neuropsychiatry. So I want just to comment and just to provide a bit of insight and education to the people. We have to keep in mind that our brain has got certain chemicals in the brain which helps us to function and activate our brain. Okay, so roughly, if you take the chemicals in the brain, they can be divided in four parts. Four parts. Number one is glutamate. Second is GABA receptors. Third is acetylcholine, and the fourth it falls as monoamines. In monoamines, the type of the chemicals that we have is serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and it also has some of the receptors which is called as mu receptors, which contains opioid receptors. So let me discuss this four chemicals in our brain in a brief summary. So what the glutamate does. So glutamate basically is one of the chemicals which I feel is quite ignored. And glutamate, what it does is our brain is activated with the electric signals. So in electric signals means the connection between one neuron to another neuron. So glutamate is a chemical that helps to relay and pass the information and activates one neuron to pass the information to the other neuron. So by doing that, it helps us to think, process our thought process. So it helps us to think critically. So keep in mind, glutamate is one chemical that is very important. As an expertise in old age psychiatry, one of the medication that I normally tend to prescribe as a second option for Alzheimer dementia is memantine, and memantine is glutamate antagonist. Okay, so keep in mind, glutamate is one chemical. The second chemical is called GABA, which can be GABA A or B. Okay, so what the GABA receptors does is, if you think glutamate, it sends the signals from one to the another. The GABA, what it does is inhibits. It prevents the signal from sending from one to another. So in conditions like when people have got high level of anxiety, we tend to prescribe GABA. So in terms of medication, the GABA medications are benzodiazepine, like diazepam. Also keep in mind the alcohol also works in the same receptors in the GABA. So that's the reason why alcohol and diazepam, they do have the addictive property that we need to be conscious of. Okay, now the number three chemical in the brain which is called acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is a chemical which have to do with memory and cognition. What we notice is conditions like Alzheimer and dementia, the acetylcholine is broken into acetyl and choline, and there's a less of acetylcholine in our brain that causes a memory problem. So that is one of the reasons why, as an expertise in dementia, we prescribe acetylcholine esterase inhibitors. So there are three groups of medication that we normally prescribe: noniprazole, galectamine, and rivastigmine. So these are the medication that prevents the breakage from acetylcholine, so the acetylcholine in the brain remains for long. Now the fourth chemical is called monoamines, and in monoamines I'm just going to discuss the two chemicals which is very important, and these are the two chemicals where a lot of the motivation interview motivator speaker tend to talk about. So the number one chemical is called serotonin. Serotonin is a happy chemical. um, if you look at the prehistoric time, the reason why the serotonin chemical that we had, it was for homeostasis, that is for safety, as well as to bring social connection. If you look our evolution in the olden times, we need to work in a group. That is the reason why the serotonin chemicals was into play. Okay, and keep in mind the serotonin chemical is also to do with happiness. And for happiness, what the scientists have found is purpose and accountability is the one that modulates the serotonin. But keep in mind that a lot of the people think that it's the money or the external factor that keeps the serotonin high, but that is not the case. I found it quite interesting while reading autobiography of some of the people like Steve Jobs as well as Elon Musk. Um, uh, when people reach to a certain level, the motivation is not money. Even the billionaire who died, Tata, his motivation to work even past the time of his retirement was purpose in life and a sense of belonging and accountability. Okay, and when I reflect my own life, I've also realized that after a certain level, money is not the thing that motivates me. It's the purpose and accountability and a challenge that helps my serotonin to be high. Okay, and keep in mind that um, serotonin also converts into melatonin, which is also a chemical which is important for us for our sleep regulation. And now serotonin as well as dopamine, it tends to compete. Dopamine is like a spark. Dopamine helps us in motivation, and dopamine also has a certain character of addictive. So if you look at the brain, there's a part of the brain below the hippocampus that's called hedones. Okay, so in neuropsychiatry is also called hedone treadmill. So people who does gambling, who does who are in addictions for, let us say, sexual addiction or drug addiction, gambling, this is like a treadmill that goes and on, and uh, people need the dopamine hit, just to activate this dopamine. And with the chemicals in the brain, it also depends on how you use it. Okay, so just to summarize the things that um, I have talked about, basically we have got four chemicals in the brain. So it's not just dopamine: glutamate, GABA, acetylcholine, monoamines. Glutamate, it's for the neuron connections; GABA for the breakage; acetylcholine for memory and cognition; and monoamines like serotonin for happy mood. Okay, and keep in mind, when we talk about happy mood, it also needs the regulations, and we also need to be aware that this is a chemical which helps us in a relationship and building social connection for the homeostasis or existence. And dopamine is the one that is for motivation, that helps us to um, evolve. Now the other chemicals are noradrenaline, norepinephrine, which tends to work in flight and flight kind of reaction. Thank you very much.